So Mr. Zuhair, why would he, the retired general, want to recruit more army in a post-conflict era? What are your comments on it?
In fact, I have got the newspaper which published the Outlook interview. Outlook is, as you rightly pointed out, is a leading weekly published in India, and this was published in the island, where it says, Fonseca tells Indian magazine he fell out with President within less than a week after victory because further recruitment was opposed. Now this is an important interview where he says 5 days after we won the war, at a meeting of the President's Security Council, the President's, President said he would stop recruiting new people in the army because it's too strong and too big, that Sri Lanka would become like Myanmar. Now such statements demoralized me. I thought they were disgusting. Now this statement is a serious pointer to what he was up to when he was in office. You will remember that he was a commander of the army. There was talk of coups and other destabilizing factors that were about to happen at a given period of time. Now this is a very clear, this is coming from Mr. Fonseca himself, and he says that he had sought to increase the army from about another 100,000 to 200,000 men after the war was over. The question that everybody should ask himself is, why should the army expand after the war was over? In fact, normally one would expect the army to be steadily cut down and reduced in size. Now this is one of the material perhaps on which there was suspicion and there was basic material to suspect that there was a move to strengthen the army in order to take control of the state. There were perhaps other evidence to which I'm not privy, but all I know is from Mr. Sarath Fonseca's interview to the Outlook magazine, it's extremely clear that he had his own ambitious plans. Now, when you look at some of the posters in Colombo walls, we find the general is coming back with his full uniform and sitting on all these walls. Now, you will remember when he was making his pronouncements earlier as army commander, he said, I will not deal or talk in politics with my uniform on. So having retired, he has no right to make use of his army uniform for his political campaign. Maybe he is not personally involved, but then he should have to manage his matters. He cannot blame others without being able to. So
are you inferring something from this?
Yes, these are clues that must alert us, because we are a democratic country with a long tradition of democracy. We are not like some of our regional countries where from time to time the army has stepped in, taken control of the country, freedoms have been lost, all activities have been brought under the control of the armed forces. Right, in the light of this Outlook interview, and also in the light of the fact that we see his, he's representing himself in this election campaign in army uniform, gives certain signals about which we have to be very, very careful. Now, as I said earlier, we will have a situation if the opposition comes to power, which I think is extremely remote. If it comes to power, there would be a lacuna that will come in, because an executive the presidency has to be abolished, somebody else has to come, and then he has to take over the government and the country. And during this interim period, you have a destabilized situation which can lead to, with parties like the JVP around, to a situation of anarchy, rioting, and maybe even a military takeover. These are not impossible possibilities. These are reasonable possibilities that one must be mindful of in the background of what Mr. Fonseca has said and how he is conducting himself in this campaign also.
Now, you were referring to in the unlikely event of the retired general coming into power and in the transferring period to the executive prime ministership. But also, according to you also, what you said was getting the two-third majority and the referendum is almost like sort of a veritable no. So basically, in that context, if the executive presidency something cannot be abolished like that, that means the retired general will also be the executive president for the next 6 years. And then also, do you see the implications of what you just discussed in terms of his military nature and the way he's using himself in the campaign might have an impact even in that context of not being able to abolish the executive presidency as promised, because it is basically a very difficult proposition and a promise that is entailed in the...
That's right. In fact, that is one of the challenges that he has to face, because that's a promise he has given to the country. Now, if he cannot fulfill that promise, then he will have to resign from that office. But will that happen? You take the example of the situation where he was earlier army commander, then he was made the CDS, in charge of all the coordinating work of all the three forces. But he thought, in one of his interviews he says that he expected that to have full powers. Why he is saying that is because he had already now accepted that position, and after accepting he finds that that position does not have the powers which he thought that will have. Now he is projecting himself as a man who can be easily played out or cheated, You see, if he was misled to believe that this post had massive powers, substantial powers, and that is why he accepted. Otherwise he would have not accepted. He would have said, I am resigning and going. He did not do that. He accepted that because he thought that it had powers. So he is a person who can be misled as well. So that is not the quality of a person who is aspiring to be the president of this country. He should be very, very careful, very sharp, very intelligent, because we are a country which has come under tremendous international pressure on various grounds. So it is extremely important that the people select the right person with the right temperament, with the correct intelligence and experience to run this complex machinery of state with all the challenges. Very often you find even a small office, people are finding it extremely difficult to manage. But with many factors and forces at our doorstep, threats and challenges emanating from many quarters, not only from abroad but also from within the country, one need to have a person who can run this country with experience. A person who does not have that experience can create chaos, confusion. You can see that in many of the interviews as he has given. He had said something, next day he has contradicted, third day he tries to elaborate on the contradiction and makes it worse. I can give you enough examples, but I'm sure you don't have too much of time to go into those details, but I can give you examples where his credibility has plummeted to very, very low level, and some of the issues like the agreement that he has entered into with the TNA, the Tamil National Alliance, has also very unfortunately contributed to greater confusion because he is not talking.
Right, so we are speaking to Mr. Zuhair, and we have touched upon the reference in the Retired General's Manifesto about abolition of the executive presidency, and in that context we have also questioned Mr. Zuhair's analysis is that looking at the conduct of the Retired General and also the statement made by himself alone, how there can be inferences made by the sort of leadership that he is going to perform in the context of a possible victory, which according to him is quite unlikely. So he was referring to the statement made by the retired general to the Indian Outlook, which said that he was disgusted because President Rajapaksa did not want the army to expand, and the inferences this has on the possible sort of military takeover and things like that can happen in the in a new transition from the executive presidency to a prime ministership, or even in the case of not being able to abolish the executive presidency,